Welcome back. For this week's fly, we're going to do a Galloup articulated barely legal. You can see it right here. It's a big fly, a lot of motion, a lot of bulk. Designed more so for a jig style retrieve than it is a jerk strip, but it's very versatile. It can be fished both ways. For the sake of time and video length, I pre-tied the tail in. We'll get zoomed in. I'll explain this as I get tying more materials in, but the tail is just, that looks all right there. The tail is just an olive brown marabou plume over white with some silver flashabou in the center. For our body, we're going to use, let's see if I got the package here, ice chenille, medium and clear. You can use pearl if you like, whichever color. They're pretty similar, honestly. And I kept the marabou plumes in for bulk, as I do on a lot of my streamers. And we'll just bring this right to our halfway point on this hook. Bring it, that's pretty close to halfway. And we'll just take and clean this up a little bit with our thread and throw a half hitch. Throw this in the cradle, and there's one material that I gotta grab before I get going too far here. I'll just set this off to the side. And what we're gonna do is use the rotary function on our vise to tie in this chenille. Give it about 2 loose wraps at first, and then just give it a quick stretch. If you try and stretch on your very first turn, it may rotate your marabou just slightly. So give it about 2 to 3 turns before you try and give this a stretch, and then on every 4th or 5th wrap afterwards, give it another, just a quick stretch. Give it a pull just to kind of set your material, anchor it in place. And then we'll tie this off. I know you can't see it, but I'll try and stretch this out. I tie with the entire package. That way there's no waste. And if you just kick it off to the side, we'll zoom out and I'll show you here. Here's the entire package right here. Just kick this off to the side, and then you can tie it behind you, and it stays out of your way pretty well. Now if you're not using a rotary vise, it's tough because you're going to have to manually wrap it, so it is easier to trim a section or a length of what you think you'll need. But this way, like I said, it just wastes a little bit less. Next up, we're going to take a plume of olive brown marabou, and this is going to be our top stack. We're going to double stack these the entire way, olive on top, white on the bottom. It's going to be the theme through the whole fly. Now, if you try and tie this in like this, you're going to have 2 things that are going to happen. One, you can see your fibers are uneven here. I mean, you have your tips are right there, and then you have the shorter stuff on the side. And 2, look at all this bulk right there. I mean, that's a lot of material to get your thread to capture and fully secure to the hook. So to eliminate this, what you do is you measure everything out. See where your tips are nice and even? See how everything on that's nice and even. Everything below that's going to fall short. Just pick this out. Get rid of that. And then what you wind up tying in is just this. That's a lot less bulk than using a whole stack. And it's going to secure to the hook a lot better. And if you take your fingers and spin them, tying them in this way, it's not going to rotate if you really wrench down on this, and I'll explain that as I get going to tie this in. So to measure this out for your reference point, you're going to take the tips of this, and it's going to end right at the halfway point on your tail. So just pull this back, give 1, 2 loose wraps, and then on your ensuing wraps you can tighten down just a little bit. And you can see as I spin the vise here a little bit, that's right at about your halfway point there. Right at about the halfway. Now we'll flip this over and keep our chenille out of the way. Grab the white plume for the bottom. This white's a little wispier than the olive, so I tried to pick pieces that were a little bit more sparse so it was uniform throughout the fly. And we'll just measure this out against the top one. That's pretty close right there. And pull this down, same thing, 1 to 2 loose wraps. 1, 2, and then tighten down as you go. Same thing as before, keep these in for bulk and run your thread just about to the eye of the hook. Stop a little bit short of it. You can see the bulk that we're forming there. And trim this off. Run your thread through here, clean it up just a touch. And our eye's still clean, we're not going to have any interference there. Now bring your chenille back around, peel this out of your way, and grab a half hitch. There we go, back in the cradle it goes. Now take 1, 2 loose wraps, we'll even give it a third, and then we're going to anchor. Now same thing as before, 4 to 5 wraps, and just give it a quick pull. Just secures your body a little bit, keeps it from unraveling on you. And we'll tie this off and we're good with the chenille. Cut that, get it out of your way. Everything looks good. Try and get this to spin around for me. That looks better. That looks better. Now, same thing as before. Take your marabou and measure it out to your halfway point on your last stack that you tied in. So that's pretty close right there. It doesn't have to be exact. That's just a reference point. You're halfway. You don't have to get too cute trying to make it perfect. Just as long as you're in the ballpark. Once again, this is a pretty sparse olive plume that I have, and then the white's a lot more wispier. Measure this out, flip your vise over, halfway point, 1, 2 loose wraps, tighten it up, flip your vise back over, and then if you take your marabou and just spin it like this, you can see how it kind of coils up. Gives you a lot cleaner of a cut than if you try to cut it while it's all spread out. Before I clean this up a little bit, we're going to take a, let's see if I can find a good one here. We want a nice straight piece of silver flashabou, and we're going to make a lateral line right down the center of our back hook. This hook is a Daiichi 2461 and it's a size 1/0. The front is going to be a 2/0. Like I said, this is a big bulky fly. I tie these also in a baby size, and I think I use a size 4 and a size 2, which is still a big fly, but in comparison to this one it's pretty tiny. And take this right to the middle of your tail and just trim it off. And it looks like I got a little spring in that. Just kind of peel back. As it gets wet, it's gonna straighten out. Not a big deal. But the big thing is you just want it going right down the center of your fly and right to the, like I said, the middle of the tail is about where you want it to stop. And that one's just going to be a pain in the ass. It's not going to want to cooperate. We'll fix it. Give a quick whip finish to this end. You don't have to worry about coloring this thread up. We're going to cover it up pretty well with our skirt as we get going on the front half of the hook. So there's your back half. We'll set this off to the side for a second, and we'll throw our 2/0 in here. And I have the connection wire pre-tied in. Once again, trying to save a little bit of time. And grab your red bead, throw this on there, grab your back hook, go right through the eye, and then back through your bead. Get your distance about how you want it, and I better tie some thread in here first. There we go. Getting ahead of myself as always. So, get your distances about how you want it, and then give a quick pull on this. Just kind of kink your articulation wire slightly, and then you can tie this in. Run this to the back, just open loop it to the back. You don't have to worry about wrenching down on this too much just yet. And check my monitor, that looks pretty good. I could have given just a little bit more on this portion of it, but I think it'll be alright. Now, my buddy Matt down in Missoula was watching me on these last couple of videos, watching me cut this articulation wire with that cobalt wire cutters. And we met up on the Madison to fish, and he said, "Josh, you just quit using them dang things." And gave me these set of diagonal cutters there. A lot cleaner, a lot easier to work with. So thanks, Matt, appreciate it. Now you're just going to take probably every 4th or 5th wrap and really wrench down on your wire with your GSP. Same thing going back. 4, 5, just tighten down a little. Tighten down, and then advance just in front of the barb of your hook. I'm going to try and keep this out of my way as best as I can. Now, the only difference with this skirt right here is instead of going to our halfway point on our most recent marabou plume, we're going to go to the 1/3 point. So I'm going to measure this out, and that's about 1/3 right there. You can see the color contrast. And then I'm going to take right on my side, but angled down, I'm going to tie this white in, and I'm going to do one on the camera side as well. And the reason for doing this is I was watching Kelly's video on this fly. He said that he used to tie him in to the halfway point, but he felt like it got just a little bit long, and these would wind up wrapping around the hook, and they would just get in the way and rob motion from the fly. So he suggested going to the 1/3 point. So that's just what I've started doing with them. And just shy of the barb of your hook, finish your wraps up. And you're going to take this olive stack, 1/3 point. I'm going to wet this down just a touch. Tie this in as well. Now I'm going to see if I can get away with doing this. I'm going to have a lot of material in one place. take and tie in. Just peel back a few fibers to where all you're working with is just the cotton or the 2 strands, and tie it in. And it looks like it's going to cooperate. Sometimes they just want to go all over the place, but these ones seem like they're going to be alright. And find your halfway point. Now, it's not going to be a true halfway on the shank of this hook, because what we're going to wind up doing is finishing it off with a fish skull head. So as you put this over, right here is going to be your reference point. So halfway between where your tail starts, or where your skirt starts, and where you're going to finish your fly, so that's going to be roughly about there. Throw another half hitch in, get it back in the cradle. And same as before, 1, 2 loose wraps, and then give it a quick stretch. 4 to 5, another stretch. 4 to 5, another stretch, and I'm going to call that good right there. Get out of there. Now, just kind of tie this in to where it's out of your way and behind you. You can see where it's kind of kicking back this direction a little bit. That way I can peel this out and I can throw my stacks in, and it's not going to be impeding anything that I tie in. So as I go forward on these, I like to get my marabou just a little wispier than the previous ones. Sometimes it can be a little tough depending on the package that you're tying out of, but this one seemed like it worked pretty well. Same thing, 1, 2 loose wraps, cinch down on it, and just kind of clean that up a little bit. See how it's going right to our halfway point there? And I should have used the white so I could color contrast it, but you'll just have to trust me that it's the halfway point or close to it. Gonna measure this out on the top. Pull a little bit more. That's close. Like I said, you don't have to get super picky. Just as long as you're in the ballpark on the halfway point. It gives your fly some consistency. And it's just, like I said, a good reference point. Not a necessity though. And that kind of got away from me just a touch. Now we'll bring these, add some more bulk, and go right to there. Remember, don't rush the eye of your hook on this one, because you're going to have to finish this with double stacks, and I'll explain that. Double stacks of marabou, and then there's some lateral lines that we're going to throw in as well. So don't rush that. If anything, keep it back just a little bit further. That way you're still able to finish with the fish skull. There's nothing worse than tying this whole thing and realizing that your head's not going to fit on there. And you have to try and cram it on, and it just winds up looking really bad. That looks pretty good. Give it 3 quick turns. Anchor. And then work your way up to the front. 4 turns. Set it. Set it. And we'll give that 1 more. We'll set that. Like I was saying, with double stacks here, I'm going to put 2 stacks of each color in to finish this. It just gives a little bit more bulk to your fly, and I like the bulk being on the front end as opposed to the back. So we'll measure this out, halfway point, tie it in, 1, 2 loose, tighten down. Grab another olive, measure it out. Same thing, 1, 2, tighten down. And it's really important to get as much of this bulk out of here as possible. Because like I said, we still have a few materials to get tied in there, and we still need to be able to fit the head over all of this. So you can see we have very minimal bulk. At the beginning of the video I explained about peeling back your marabou. If you didn't peel it back right now, this would look like a balloon and you'd never be able to get this head over top of it. So we're going to flip this back over. I'm going to measure this out real quick. Flip this over, we're going to tie in the white. We go 1, 2 loose, 3rd tight, clean it up, and our last stack. I probably could have got away with just throwing 1 stack because this is a pretty wispy fiber, so I'm just going to cut this one down slightly. Yeah, it's definitely a lot wispier than the olive is. I just ran a 2/0 through my thumb. And 1, 2 loose, tighten down. I'm going to cut these one at a time to save some bulk. Good, and get out of there. Good. And we're starting to come into shape here pretty nicely. Now, one thing I'll do, just to be sure, I'm going to take this head right over top, and it's fitting perfect. Everything looks good. I still have plenty of room for the eye. You can see, even with my fat fingers in there, that we have plenty of room for the eye. It's nice and clean, so we're in good shape. Straighten this out slightly. Now, same thing as we did on the back hook. These couple of fibers just don't want to cooperate, so pull them out. We're going to take a nice straight piece, and I'm going to use 2 on this one. 2 pieces of silver flashabou, and run this probably to the midway point of my back hook. Run them right down the center, nice lateral lines. And yeah, we'll go right to the midway point. This just adds a little bit of flash, a little bit of extra sexiness to the fly, and it gives it that distinct lateral line. Bring it over on this side, tie it in, and I can't find both of them. There they are. Halfway point of your back fly, cut them off, and just get those out of your way. Two more materials and we'll be able to throw the head on this and call it good. This is just some ice wing bait fish mix. We're going to throw this in just above our lateral line, and you do not need a ton of this stuff. You can see the amount that we'll be working with. Just peel this out, kind of get it nice and straight, and just add this wing. Same way you tied in the flashabou. Take it on this side, bring it back over, clean that up. Now what I'll do is bring both sides together right above the fly, and I'll just push my scissors right through it. You can see, just gives a little bit of extra contrast, a little bit of extra flash. It's real subtle, but I don't know, it just kind of sexies the fly up yet again. It looks pretty good. Last material we're going to use on here, and this is the one that I didn't have pre-prepped, so bear with me just a minute. Get these picked out. These are just olive grizzly hackle stems, or yeah, just a hackle stem. And this is going to be your last lateral line, and I'm going to take this to the midway point on my tail. Measure this out. Give a couple loose wraps at first. And it wants to turn on me. Work this back. There we go. So find your midway point on the tail. And loose wraps. Work this down to the center, and you want this going down right down the center of your hook. Have the loose wraps on there, and then once it's in place, you can tighten down on it. That's looking pretty good. Same thing with this side. Measure it out. That's pretty close. Right down the center. So we're going to go loose, loose, and you can see how it's going right down the center for us. Once you know that it's going to be in place and it's not going to rotate and spin on you, you can go ahead and really tighten down on these, and that will do it. Get this back hook sitting where it needs to be. Now before we go and start to put our head on, just give a real quick look, make sure everything's going to be lining up how you want it. It looks like this is going to be pretty good. That's going to cooperate. Now we'll throw a whip finish in, 2, 3, and we're good. Now before I glue any of this, I'm just going to slip this head right back over top, make sure that my eye is still going to be clear. As you can see, we still have a good clean eye, so we're good. We can finish this fly off. Get everything going right down the center how you want it, and it's going to move around until you get this head on, just because it's hanging down in a vise and these stems are going to fall down. But as long as they're going down the center for you, you're in good shape. Just like in the Tenet 2 video, I explained how these skull heads carry the weight on the bottom. You can see where the more material is on the bottom of this, so you're going to set that. That's how you want to set that, with your weight on the bottom. They're counterbalanced, that way your hooks are going to be riding down. So we're going to take just 2 dabs of zap right on the eye here, or right behind the eye. Try not to get your marabou at all, or else you're going to rob your fly of motion. So just 2 small dabs. Peel all of your material back and throw your head on, and just push this back. Hold it for a second or 2 and release it. You can take this out of the vise now, and this is where it's a lot easier to work with your lateral lines, because gravity's not trying to pull them down and just wreak havoc on everything. So you can see everything is coming down right down the center. We have our silver flashabou, our bait fish mix. Everything going right down the center. Everything looks good for us. This is slightly off, but I'm not going to get too picky on this. It's going to be moving in the water anyhow. It's not going to look the same as it does coming off the vise. So, last thing we're going to do is make sure that your head lines up with the point of your hook, and we're just going to drop 3 or 4 beads of zap down through here. 2, and don't get on my marabou. 4. We're set. I'll leave it standing up in the vise for a second. And the last thing I'll do is I'll just take an old marabou stem and I'll run it right through the eye. Leave some material on, like you can see it like that, and just pull it right through. You're clean. Everything's good. Now we'll pull this back out of the vise and set it in normally. And we are good to go. Like I said, this stuff's going to want to fall around. But that is your finished, articulated, barely legal. If you have any questions on this fly, want me to repeat any steps, just leave them in the comments and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next week.